All right, everybody, welcome back to Hawk Droppings. We have a bit of a special edition today. This is the 34 felony count episode of Hawk Droppings. I'm recording this about 12:30 in the afternoon on Saturday, April 13th. And the day after tomorrow, Donald Trump's first criminal trial starts in Manhattan. Was brought against him by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. He's facing 34 felony counts, state charges, for falsifying business records in the first degree. Each one of those counts carries fines and penalties and things like that, but each count also carries a maximum of 4 years in prison. Assuming Donald Trump is convicted on all or most of these counts, which he will be, I don't know what this judge, Juan Merchan, will do as far as sentencing. If he will sentence Donald Trump to actual prison time. I would highly, highly doubt that Donald Trump's going to get prison time for this case. Several reasons for that, and I'm going to kind of start here at the end, and then we'll go back through. These are nonviolent offenses. These are Donald Trump's. I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but in the eyes of the law, these are Donald Trump's first offenses, criminal offenses. But anyway, from the date that the jury returns its verdict until the date of sentencing is going to be about a 3 to 6 month long period of time. And so assuming that this trial, which is starting on April 15th, assuming we get a verdict by the first or second week in June, 3 to 6 months, election day is right smack in the middle of that. And I just don't expect this judge to sentence Donald Trump to prison before election day. If he's going to sentence Donald Trump to prison, he's going to set the sentencing for after election day. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that. So the case itself. I will email these two documents to my brother, and maybe he can put links to them in the show notes. There are actually two documents involved in the indictment here. We have the actual indictment itself, and then accompanying the indictment is what's called the statement of facts. And this is basically the factual recitation that serves as the factual basis for the counts of the indictment. It's about a 12-page document. It's super easy to read. It's not complicated. There's nothing at all about this case that's complicated. I mean, there's nothing. It's 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. So it's what we call a documents case. I mean, this case depends entirely on documents. The documents comprise almost all of the evidence. It's canceled checks, that were signed by Michael Cohen. It's canceled checks that were signed by David Pecker at the National Enquirer. And there are canceled checks signed by Donald Trump reimbursing Michael Cohen. And we'll go through the details on that stuff. There is also at least one audio recording of Michael Cohen and Donald Trump discussing the payoff to one of the two women involved. And so procedurally during a criminal jury trial, how do you get documents into evidence? How do you get them admitted into evidence such that they're a part of the official court record, and that when the jury at the end of the case gets to go back and deliberate, they will have the evidence in the room with them? So how do you get a document introduced into evidence? I'll just take one example, and we'll talk about Michael Cohen being on the stand. But assume that Michael Cohen is on the stand. He wrote a check to Stormy Daniels for $130,000. The prosecution will have that canceled check or a copy of it. And while he is on the stand, procedurally, it'll work like this. The judge has a copy, defense has a copy, the clerk has a copy, and, Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness. Go ahead. He approaches the witness, prosecutor does, with a copy of the check, hands that check to Michael Cohen. He goes back to counsel table or the podium and says, Mr. Cohen, do you recognize what I've just handed you? Michael Cohen will say, yes, I do. Be like, can you describe for the jury what this document is? Be like, this is a copy of the canceled check that I wrote to Stormy Daniels for $100,000 or $130,000. And just to further kind of tighten it down, the prosecutor will be like, and what bank is it drawn on? He'll say that, and he'll be like, did you have an account with that bank? Yes, I did. The account number that's on that check, is that your account number? Yes, it is. And most importantly, be like, is that your signature that appears on this document? Yes, it is. And then we'll say, Your Honor, I would like to admit this exhibit into evidence. And there'll be some discussion between the judge and defense counsel. It will be admitted into evidence. And then that document is part of the record. So that anything that is in evidence, that is the universe of materials apart from witness testimony that the jury gets to consider when they're making, their determinations of who did what and when, and when they are back in the jury room, going over all of these things during their deliberations, and when they're deciding whether or not a person is guilty of a crime or multiple crimes and how many counts. So the evidence is going to consist of documents, a couple of audio recordings, and witness testimony in this case. And then, the prosecutor might follow up after that document's been admitted into evidence. You can just say, Mr. Cohen, why did you write this check to her? That's an example of what we call a direct examination question. Direct examination questions, you're not permitted to lead the witness. Leading the witness is something that's typically associated with cross-examination, where basically the lawyer is testifying. It's like, you wrote her this check, correct? That's your signature, correct? You wrote this to pay her off for sex, correct? Yes. That's a big difference between, excuse me, between those kinds of leading or cross-examination questions, which the opposing party is permitted to do, then when you have your own witness on the stand and you have to ask them open-ended direct examination questions like, what happened next? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? When you've got somebody on direct examination, you can't ask them questions where the answer to the question is contained in the phrasing. So that's how documents are going to get introduced into evidence in this case. And again, it's a documents case. The prosecutor has all the documents. He's got the four people involved in creating and receiving those documents. He's got David Pecker from National Enquirer, who paid off Karen McDougal, the former Playboy model. He's got Michael Cohen, who wrote a check to pay off Stormy Daniels. And those two are going to testify. And then Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal are also going to testify because they were the person who received those two checks. Then Michael Cohen is also going to be able to testify about further documents consisting the checks that Donald Trump wrote to him from the Trump organization to reimburse him for the payment that he made to Stormy Daniels. And it's those checks and those ledger entries and those invoices that Michael Cohen sent that comprise the bulk of the felony counts here, because each document, each ledger entry, each bookkeeping entry can constitute its own count. Now, interestingly, there's been a ton of commentary that, especially from people on the right, that these are misdemeanors, that the statute of limitations already expired on all of these, yada, yada, yada. And we'll go through some of that timeline here in a minute. But New York law is weird, especially when it comes to falsification of business records. And they have some unique laws, and they have some very stringent laws. And I think it's simply a function of, New York City being, one of, if not the main financial center of the world. The stock market's here, all the big banks are here. It's like you got New York, you got London. I don't know what else you have that competes with that. So there's always been kind of a watchdog atmosphere over the financial world in New York City from local and state prosecutors, certainly from the state legislature, and most definitely from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the SDNY, the Southern District of New York. So, but essentially it's like, yeah, a lot of these charges are misdemeanor charges. However, under New York law, you can bundle them together as part of a common scheme to violate another law that is a felony. And then that makes all of these associated charges felonies as well. And so that's kind of what's going on here. The interesting thing is that in the indictment, you don't have to specify what that other felony is. Everybody is speculating that it's felony campaign violations, election interference violations, or campaign finance violations. And certainly because when Michael Cohen was prosecuted for some of these things at the federal level, those were some of the charges that he was defending himself against at that time. All right, so let's dig into the facts and dig into the timeline here. It's like this all starts in June, mid-June of 2025, when Donald Trump announces that he's running for president. He comes down his little golden escalator, and a month or two later, he meets with David Pecker at Trump Tower. Pecker is the chairman and CEO of AMI, American Media Incorporated, which owns the National Enquirer. And Pecker agrees to help Trump's campaign by keeping an eye out for anyone wanting to sell damaging stories about Donald Trump, and basically agrees to catch and kill those stories. And catch and kill is a phrase that I didn't know about until a couple of years ago. Apparently it's pretty common in that type of, literary universe that's inhabited by publications like the National Enquirer. You pay someone for exclusive rights to their story, and then you don't publish it. You catch it, you get it, exclusive rights to it, and then you stuff it in the trash and you don't publish it at all. So you're purchasing it for the purpose of covering it up. And so going back to August of 2015, more than a year before Election Day, Trump is already meeting with David Pecker from the National Enquirer, saying, hey, keep an eye out for stories. If you hear of anything, let me know. And Pecker agrees to do that. And then the first one that pops up in October or November of 2015, Pecker finds out there's a doorman from a building in Manhattan that is shopping around a story that Donald Trump fathered a different child out of wedlock. And so he contacts Trump's people. He's like, here's what's going on. And he pays that doorman $30,000 for his story, and makes him sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so that the guy can't talk to anybody else about that story. And so they're still digging around and digging around and digging around. Then in June of election year, June 2016, is when David Pecker contacts Michael Cohen about Karen McDougal. Karen McDougal in the indictment is woman number one, in the statement of facts. Karen McDougal is woman number one. And so she says that she had the details of her relationship with Trump are a little murky. Stormy Daniels was a one-time thing at South Lake Tahoe at Harrah's during a golf tournament. Karen McDougal, I saw an interview with her where she's like, their relationship was ongoing and it sounded like she was in love with Donald Trump. And I was just like, wow. I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm in love with Donald Trump. Yeah. So anyway, um, so Pecker and Cohen make arrangements for AMI, the National Enquirer's parent company, to make a deal with Karen McDougal. They pay her $150,000 to prevent her from speaking about their sexual relationship. She also got 2 magazine cover features from AMI. They own a bunch of different magazines. And then she wrote a series. They let her write a series of articles published under her byline that apparently were not about having sex with her one true love, Donald Trump. Whatever. So that's deal number one. And so as this is developing in September 2016, Michael Cohen has a conversation with Donald Trump about Karen McDougal and about this. And somehow that conversation was recorded on audio. And they're having a very frank conversation about it. This is obviously back when Trump and Michael Cohen were still on good terms. And Trump's like, Michael Cohen is like, okay, yeah, we're going to need to pay her. And he's like, what do you mean we got to pay her? And he's like, well, we got to pay her. We're going to pay her 150 grand. He's like, okay, you want to write a check? And Michael Cohen is like, no. Donald Trump's ready to pull out his own checkbook and write a check for 150 grand to Karen McDougal. And Michael's like, no, that's a bad idea, dude. You need to put some daylight between you and that. Or he's like, cash. Donald Trump's like, let's pay cash. Let's just give her cash. Let's just give her a brown paper bag full of cash. And Michael Cohen's like, no, I'll take care of it. And the mechanics of how Michael Cohen paid her, he took out a personal home equity line of credit on his own home where he lives with his wife and 2 children. And using that home equity line of credit, he opened up a bank account. He deposited a check. I'm mixing these 2 up. So I'm talking about Stormy Daniels now. Excuse me. I apologize. Let me back up. It's difficult to keep some of this stuff straight. So AMI David Pecker paid Karen McDougal 150 grand, gave her the 2 magazine covers, and then this series of feature articles under her byline. Relative to Stormy Daniels, that was the conversation in September 2016 that was audio recorded, and then Michael Cohen takes care of that payment. And he, using the home equity line of credit, he wrote a check for $131,000, deposited it into a separate account that he had established under the name of like some new LLC or shell company that he established for this purpose. And he named that shell company, that LLC, Essential Consultants. Essential Consultants for all of your sexual payment needs. And so Cohen pays her, and then he meets with Alan Weisselberg, who was the CFO of the Trump organization, who's currently in Rikers prison now for a second time. Fallen on his sword again for Donald Trump. Dude's doing 5 months in Rikers prison at 80 years old, and he's doing time for Donald Trump. It's insane. It's just ridiculous and insane. Going to prison for Donald Trump at 80 years old, and not just going to prison, but going to Rikers Island, Manhattan, which, I don't know if you've ever seen any episodes of Law and Order. Rikers Island is not a hospitable location. I don't care how old you are. If you're 80 years old, my God, man. So they get both of these women paid off. And then what happens? October 7th happens. Not October 7th, 2023. October 7th, 2016 happens. October 7th, 2016 is when the Access Hollywood tape comes out. Donald Trump talking to Billy Bush, grab him by the pussy. I just grab him, start kissing him. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do whatever you want, yada, yada, yada. Everybody thought Donald Trump's campaign was dead in the water. And he apologized for it. And frankly, I think that was probably like the only time in his life that he had ever actually apologized for anything. And that was less than a month before Election Day. Yeah. And so this is also was within a couple of, so they pay off Karen McDougal in June of 2016. The Access Hollywood tape hits on October 7th, 2016. And then they pay off Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen pays off Stormy Daniels just a few days after that to kill that story. Because it's like, I mean, think about this. Think if the Access Hollywood tape had hit, and then we learned about Karen McDougal, and then we learned about Stormy Daniels, all in like that 3 weeks before Election Day. Maybe he would have been elected, maybe he wouldn't have been elected. But the reason that he paid off these two women was to prevent them from telling their stories publicly before Election Day. Because he thought because Trump believed it would have a negative impact on his chances in the 2016 election. That shows intent. That's intent. That's mens rea. That's state of mind. That is his motive for paying these women off when he did. And amazingly, pays off McDougal, Access Hollywood tape comes out, pays off Stormy Daniels, November 8th, 2016, he wins the presidential election. So who knows? Maybe he was right. Maybe he was right that it would have affected everything. So now it's the only thing we have at this point in time is 2 checks have been written to 2 women. That's it. That's the only thing that exists as of Election Day, 2016. So what happens after that? In January of 2017, Trump meets with Michael Cohen, and they make repayment arrangements that'll be handled through Trump Organization, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Also in January 2017, Trump meets privately with Pecker in Trump Tower, thanking him for handling the story about the doorman. Don't forget about the doorman. And for taking care of the Karen McDougal story. Trump invites Pecker to the inauguration, and they discuss some repayment stuff too. Now, January 2017 is also when Michael Cohen finalizes with Alan Weisselberg his repayment arrangements. And what they agree, so Michael Cohen wrote a check to Stormy Daniels for $130,000. He was reimbursed $420,000. But Hawk, those numbers don't match. Well, here's how it worked. They took the 130 and doubled it. So that's 260, which 260 income, Michael Cohen would use half of that to pay taxes on the 130. They added $50,000 reimbursement for another unrelated expense that Michael Cohen had, and then added a $60,000 year-end bonus for Cohen. So you total all of those up, it totals $420,000. So, and how this was going to be handled, and here's where all of the counts in the indictment come from. How this was going to be handled was 12 monthly payments of $35,000 beginning in February 2017. And they all decided that this was going to be quote unquote legal fees. There was no retainer agreement, but Michael Cohen was submitting invoices each month for $35,000 for legal fees. Alan Weisselberg would cut a check to Michael Cohen for $35,000 for legal fees, and Donald Trump would sign that check. Each one of those steps is a crime. It's a fake invoice. There's a falsified invoice. There's a falsified check. There's a falsified ledger entry. Donald Trump signs it, gives the check to Michael Cohen. That's a fraudulent transaction. So there's like 3 or 4 crimes in each one of those transactions. They do that over the course of 2017. That wraps up in January or February of 2018. And then in April this is something I need to go back and unpack a little bit. In April of 2018, Donald Trump's been in office for over a year. He's already fired James Comey and replaced him with Christopher Wray. He's got Jeff Sessions as his attorney general. But April 9th, 2018, the FBI executes a search warrant on Michael Cohen's 2 residences and his office. The president of the United States' personal attorney, the FBI executed search warrants on 2 of his homes and his office. And so it's like the DOJ is going after the president's personal attorney, and it's the president's DOJ that's doing it. And which I always found that to be fascinating. I found that to be fascinating. And then there's, I'm going to wrap up this section of it. There was some stuff about, Trump was tweeting that Michael Cohen would never flip. He's never going to flip. He's not a flipper. He's never going to flip. He's strong. He's going to stand tall. Da, 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 da. That's in like April and May going into June. And well, by July, Michael Cohen admitted to everything he did. AMI admitted to what they did and entered into a non-prosecution agreement. And then, Michael Cohen was prosecuted. He pled guilty and he got sentenced to 3 years in prison, in part for the things that I've just been talking about. And then Donald Trump, he cooperated with the feds. And then Donald Trump was obviously extremely angry with him for cooperating with the feds. And it's like, I don't know, if you ever need a good lawyer, don't hire Michael Cohen. Okay. So that, that kind of stuff. So anyway, then that investigation continued. And in March of 2023, Donald Trump was indicted on 34 felony counts for all of these activities that I've just discussed. And he was indicted at the state level by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And that criminal trial starts on Monday. So what's going to happen on Monday? Again, it's Donald Trump. There's going to be shenanigans. They're just going to be shenanigans. I mean, he's tried 11 times to get this case either dismissed or continued, and he has failed every single time. And I would be astonished if we get to, 9 a.m. East Coast time Monday morning and everybody's in the courtroom and he hasn't tried again. He is absolutely desperate to prevent this case from going forward. One, because the details are personally embarrassing to him. When he was, I think when he slept with me, whatever, when he had sex with Stormy Daniels, Melania had just given birth to Barron, their son Barron. I think Barron was 2 or 3 months old. And allegedly he was having this kind of an ongoing relationship with Karen McDougal in Florida while Melania was pregnant with Barron. And so it's personally embarrassing to him. Not the least of which, because Stormy Daniels has spoken publicly that Donald Trump has a small misshapen penis that looks like a mushroom. And, presumably she will testify to that from the witness stand in this trial as well. So assuming everything goes off without a hitch Monday morning, the judge has already dealt with pretrial motions. There are going to be something like 500 or 600 prospective jurors showing up at the courthouse, and Monday will commence jury selection. And what's jury selection? So in federal court, well, the jury selection process it's called voir dire or voir dire, two Latin words, VOIRDIRE. I don't know what they translate to. Who knows? It's just voir dire, jury selection. And at the state court level, it's the opportunity for each side's attorneys to question prospective jurors and try to find out if they're biased, how they're biased, if they're smart enough to sit on a jury, if they're a complete potato. You try to find out all kinds of things about potential jurors, because especially in a case like this, choosing the jury is going to be potentially the most important step in the entire case. The prosecutors want people who are going to be objective and fair, and they are going to try to root out any, like Fox News MAGA type who's trying to get on the jury and lying about their beliefs in order to do that. Because in civil cases, you need 9 out of 12 to get a verdict. In criminal cases, because in civil cases, you're just fighting about money. In criminal cases, you're fighting over somebody's individual liberty and freedom. And so you need a unanimous jury, one way or the other in a criminal case. Unanimous for conviction, unanimous for acquittal. Anything that's not unanimous is a hung jury, and the prosecution gets to take another shot at prosecuting the case. So the defense is, so the judge put out the list of questions for the jury questionnaire that the jurors are going to fill out, and the judge has ordered that the jury remain anonymous, which I think is spectacular. I'm not normally a fan of that, but in this case, my God, man, if Donald Trump gets convicted of multiple felonies and people out in MAGA land find out the names and addresses and photos of the people who served on the jury, holy shit, man, those people's lives are over. So I support Judge Merchan's decision to keep the jury anonymous. So what kinds of questions are going to be asked of these jurors? Well, the judge has put out his list of questions. And so there's two parts to it. There's a jury questionnaire. So that's a written document that the jurors will fill out by hand, probably before they even come to court on Monday. And it includes information like, where in New York do you live? How long have you lived in New York? Are you a native New Yorker? Where did you live previously? What do you do for a living? How long have you been doing that? Are you retired? Who's your current employer? Are there other people who live with you in your home? Do you own your home, rent your home? Are you married? Are you single? Are you a parent? How many kids do you have? Are your kids at home with you? All of those just kind of day-to-day mechanics of people's lives. Do you have any hobbies? What are your hobbies? Do you participate in any organizations or advocacy groups? Then this stuff, one that's important is, have you ever served on a jury before? Have you ever been a foreperson before? Was it a civil case? Was it a criminal case? Did the jury actually get to a verdict in the case? One thing that I think is important in this case, included in the questionnaire, is which of the following print publications, cable and or network programs, or online media such as websites, blogs, or social media platforms do you visit, read, or watch? And it's a list New York Times, USA Today, Huffington Post, MSNBC, Google, Facebook, TikTok, Fox News, Newsmax, Yahoo, Truth Social, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, yada, yada, yada. Because now today it's like, our news media is so divided and basically polarized that you can almost kind of tell what a person's political beliefs are going to be just by them telling you where they get their news. Like if somebody says, I get all of my news from Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, and Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, you know exactly what that person's politics are without question, without failure. The next question is, do you listen to podcasts? If so, which ones? Do you listen to talk radio? If so, which ones? Then there were a couple more that I wanted to talk. Okay. These are the questions that Trump's defense team doesn't like. Have you, a relative or close friend, ever worked for any company or organization that is owned by Donald Trump or anybody in his family? Have you ever worked for or volunteered for his campaign, his administration, or any political entity affiliated with Mr. Trump? Have you ever attended a rally or campaign event for Donald Trump? And one thing that burns Donald Trump's ass is that throughout this list of questions that was written by Judge Merchan, he refers to him as Mr. Trump. Nowhere in this document does he refer to Trump as President Trump. And that just chaps Trump's ass hard. And do you follow Trump on any social media? Have you ever worked for any anti-Trump organization? Have you ever attended any rally or campaign event for any anti-Trump organization? Because you got to balance that stuff out. Here's my favorite question in the whole thing. Have you ever considered yourself a supporter of or belong to any of the following? The QAnon movement, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, the Boogaloo Boys, Antifa. So those are the kinds of questions that people get asked during jury selection. Now, who are some of the witnesses? So I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So I would be surprised, given the importance of jury selection in this case to both sides. They're each going to use as much time as the judge is going to let them. And if the judge just lets them go until both sides are satisfied, I would be surprised if jury selection takes less than 2 weeks. So it could be that, the actual trial itself, witness testimony doesn't start until the beginning of May. But judges also have a tremendous amount of discretion as to their ability to limit jury selection and limit the voir dire process. I've seen judges give each side 30 minutes to question a jury. In federal court, the attorneys don't get to question the jury at all. The judge does voir dire. You can submit questions to the judge, and it's up to him or her whether or not they read those questions to potential jurors. But also of great importance during the jury selection process, each side will have 10 peremptory challenges. What the hell is that? A peremptory challenge is you get these opportunities to just have people thrown out, and you don't have to state a reason. You don't have to give a reason at all. You can be talking to somebody, and even if they don't say anything that is super concerning to you as an attorney, if you're just getting a bad vibe from them, if you're just getting a real bad vibe, but that's not enough to justify asking the court to get rid of that juror, then you can use what's called a peremptory challenge. So you can say, okay, thank you, Your Honor. We would thank and excuse juror number 10. And you're looking at your client going, that guy gave me the willies. And so each side gets to use 10 of those. and you can use them for whatever reason that you want to, except for a person's protected class status. And the most common, I think, there was a Supreme Court case on it called Batson, Batson, a Batson challenge. It's like, it's like if you're getting rid of all potential jurors who share a common racial demographic, if you're getting rid of all the black jurors and you're a prosecutor and the criminal defendant is black, you're going to get a Batson challenge for that. You're not allowed to do that. So, but apart from that, you can use peremptory challenges for whatever you want. The second kind of challenge is challenge for cause. And each side gets an unlimited number of challenges for cause. And, challenge for cause is use that same exact, you got a white prosecutor, you got a black criminal defendant, and the prosecutors or the defense attorney is up there questioning potential jurors. And he's got this crusty old white guy up there who just says, well, I'm racist. I'm completely racist. And the judge would be like, or the attorney would say, Your Honor, we would challenge this juror for cause. The judge would be like, yeah, bye-bye, you're out. Each side gets an unlimited number of challenges for cause, which is good and bad. It's great because there shouldn't be a limit on that. But, in the hands of Donald Trump and his attorneys, assuming we see any detailed reporting about this, you're going to see some extremely creative and I think numerous challenges for cause during this jury selection process because they know they're limited only to 10 peremptories. And the strategy of that is, it's like if you're questioning a potential juror that you don't like, you want to keep them talking until they give you cause. Because then it's like if you don't like them and you want them off the jury and then you keep going at them and then they give you cause, then you didn't have to use one of your peremptory challenges and you can save it for somebody else. And so first and foremost is going to be the jury selection process. I think it's going to be lengthy. I think it's going to take a lot of time. I think that is also going to be extremely disappointing for people because jury selection is incredibly boring. There's not really going to be much news about the trial or about what's going on in the trial because there won't be a trial until the jury selection process is finished. But the length and duration of that jury selection process is 100% up to the judge. It's his courtroom. He runs his courtroom, period. However, Judge Merchan also, just like Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C. on the January 6th case, and just like Judge, I think his name's McAfee in Fulton County, Georgia, they are keenly aware that these cases that they have are unlike any other criminal cases that have ever existed in the United States. It's a former president of the United States. And Judge Merchan in Manhattan, I think he has struck a very good balance between being incredibly firm and unwavering as far as trial dates and things like that. But he's given Donald Trump more than enough rope to hang himself on all kinds of issues in this case. And I think that will also extend to jury selection. I don't foresee Judge Merchan putting any limits on the attorneys in the voir dire process that anyone would think is in any way unreasonable or restrictive. So that's the overview of the case. That's how we got to trial. And then jury selection is what I think is going to take up the first couple of weeks of trial. And when we come around to the point where we start with actual witness testimony, which should probably take between 4 to 6 weeks, then I envision I'm probably going to be doing a lot of podcasts while that trial is going on. There's going to be a tremendous number of things to talk about and discuss. And so my brother and I are kind of gearing up for that and scoping out our ideas on what we think that stuff should look like. So if you guys have ideas, let us know. I mean, my initial thought is, I do coffee with Hawk twice a week. I'm thinking about bumping that up to 4 days a week because court will be in session 4 days a week. But that's just my initial first thought. If you guys have any ideas, please let us know in the comments or in the comment threads that we have going on the Patreon page. Because one thing I've learned from the comment threads on our Patreon page is a lot of times you guys have better ideas than I do. So, and I'm totally 100% open to that always. All right. So 48 hours from now, Donald Trump will be in a Manhattan courtroom on trial for 34 felony counts. Man, it's been quite a road getting here. So we'll see what happens this week. As always, big thanks to my brother Falcon, our buddy Wiseacre, my buddy Anu for the music. And thank you to everyone who subscribes to this podcast. It's going to be a bumpy couple of months, but my brother and I are going to do absolutely everything in our power to keep everybody updated on everything and have interesting discussions going on, and hopefully some interesting perspectives too. Apart from that, it's about 1:15 p.m. on Saturday, April 13th, and I am going to go do my taxes now. I hope the rest of everybody's weekend is more fun than what mine's going to be. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.